Donald Trump was not alone in his mistreatment by legacy media. In the 2019 Democratic primary debates, presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard had her face digitally altered on live television. NBC motion-tracked a fake blemish onto Gabbard's face, which would frequently vanish and reappear in real time.
Far more costly than anything that we ever saw in Iraq. It would take many more lives. It would exacerbate the refugee crisis.
Did anybody after the debates mention it to you that this strange thing seemed to happen?
No, I had no idea. You guys are clearly on it. When I saw it, I was like, that wasn't there. That wasn't there at all yesterday. And then to see it disappear was very strange.
Who's done a lot of deep dives, as you have, on this subject. And he had concluded that he thinks she had foreknowledge of his assassination. So that's him.
At minimum.
That you, and it certainly looks that way. So let me get into this. So you were talking to this whistleblower on your show, and Matthew, what's his last name? I'm blanking.
Tucciarone. Matthew Tucciarone.
Tucciarone. Okay, and you were asking him, when did you? Because he was an insider at TPUSA for a while. He worked on their Get Out the Vote campaign. And he's very familiar with all these people. And
yeah, so specifically, he worked with the TP Action side of everything, which is supposed to be like their political arm of Turning Point.
And you asked him about when she started to insert herself into TPUSA events.
Are there any rumors about Erica Kirk's kind of administrative involvement in the months leading up to Charlie's death? Was she kind of inserting herself more frequently?
Yeah, she was inserting herself more frequently. Beforehand, she was just a trad wife. I got invited to the Andy Biggs gubernatorial race launch because Turning Point is backing Andy Biggs. Andy Biggs is running for governor in Arizona right now. They invited a lot of the field reps who chased the vote to this event in Scottsdale. This is when, and this is in June, I want to say right after Memorial Day weekend, early June, this is when Erica made her big debut for at least us in Arizona. She got on stage and she said, I typically don't do this, but this is for my husband. I'm usually the stay-at-home mom, guys, I'm the trad wife, blah, blah, blah. But this is for Andy. This is for our state. I must make an appearance and just really support my husband. And I was looking at my friends. I'm like, I've never seen her come out like this before. That to me signified the change in the takeover right there.
And so now
that was weird. That was out of place. That was abnormal.
That was very abnormal.
And so now
did it catch anybody else's attention, or were you the only one fixated on this?
I was the only one pretty much fixated on this, but I do look back and I have talked to my friend who's on the inside, no longer on the inside as of her post on X recently. I would say she caught on as well. That's why she sent that video of Erica and Mikey, at that staff meeting at AmFest. Because we see there's smart people in Turning Point, and then there's really not so smart people.
And so here's the video he's referring to. So let's get to that, and then I'll get you to weigh in on this, Stu.
Yeah, we have that video. I actually want to roll that again here real quick. Let's roll this Erica Kirk video. We can't see this one enough.
Really led the staff meeting because Charlie had to fly back to Palm Beach with the president. And it's crazy to look back and you just kind of see the Lord kind of knitting his own beautiful image that sometimes we just don't always see. But we're blessed to be here for the second staff meeting at AmFest with you.
Okay, so that video shows Erica.
So tell me, what does that video show to you, Stu?
I mean, she's literally on a pedestal. The only thing missing here is the big palm leaves and the bowl of grapes that these people are supposed to feed her. She is literally standing on top of a coffee table, elevating herself above everybody, holding that microphone and just smiling ear to ear. And what I hate about that whole exchange, other than the fact that, all these people at Turning Point USA are latent closeted homosexuals. And, whatever somebody wants to do, that's on them. But to be out here pretending that you're something different. And you could totally tell Mikey McCoy there. I mean, nobody has gestures like that. This guy, Matthew Tucciarone, is an openly gay guy. And, you know, he was telling me in conversation off the air leading up to our interview, he's like, I don't even behave like this. I don't flail my arms around and make these gestures. I mean, these people are just, they're flamers. But for him to invoke God into all of this and say, all of this is because of God. Charlie's death is just a part of God's plan for all of us to be able to be here in this spot at this America Fest, to have all these people, to have all of this money, to have all of these blessings, to have all of this attention, and to have you leading us again. And at the beginning of that, it was kind of cut off, but what he was referring to there is 2 years previous to that, Charlie Kirk unexpectedly had to go like travel with the president or something. And so he wasn't in these, you know, preparation type planning meetings for America Fest that year. And he's like kind of reliving that. And he's saying, you know, just like then, it's just so great to have you leading us. And his body gestures at the end of that, I know that language. I know body language very well. I was a bounty hunter for 15 years. I know when you're lying. I know when you're putting on a show. I know when you're nervous. I know when your hands are probably clammy. And this guy is so nervous because if you don't comply here, if you don't go along, if you don't follow this very careful plan that has been set forth by Erica and by her handlers, by her paymasters, by her associates, her affiliates, that she brags and boasts about having relationships with, they'll kill you. They will kill you. And they proved that on September 10th. But the way that he said, and we're just so happy, and he kind of like jerked his body, that is a very nervous reaction. I've seen it. It's textbook. This guy literally fears for his life, but he invokes God. She's putting herself on this pedestal, and that's all her. Somebody pushed that thing over there. She climbed up on that thing, and she elevated herself. It's disgusting. The whole thing.
So when they say God's plan, they really mean their own plan, because...
Of course they do.
Right?
And when she says, you know, earth-shattering event, or, you know, once in a lifetime, whatever how did she describe the event?
Once in a century.
Yeah. I mean, I want to know what event she's actually talking about. Is it all-encompassing? Is it to arrive at this point that this big event had to take place, and so now here it is? And I've made, you know, a lot of statements early on about what I think TPUSA always has been. And after talking to Matthew Tucciarone, and we have like, I think we're at like 8 right now, over a half a dozen, almost 10 insiders that are currently there right now who are confidentially informing us. So I know that Candace has a lot more of them too. And I think there's going to be a lot more people that want to come out because the behavior that they're seeing, and then you go and fire 40 people. I will say this, from what Matthew Tucciarone said, that he was the only one that noticed that she was kind of putting herself on the scene. The way that he answered the question wasn't really what I was getting at, and I didn't keep hammering it because there were other things to get to. But we have heard from several insiders that in the months before Charlie was executed, she was inserting herself managerially as more of a CEO type of role very early on. And she was asserting herself, and she was making decisions for this company, you know, in the absence of Charlie. And she was saying things like, don't worry about what he says. He will agree with this. People were asking, does he know about this? And she was saying, no, he doesn't, but that's none of his business. I've got this. I'm going to take care of this. So from a managerial operations perspective, Erica Kirk, going back at least 2 months prior to Charlie Kirk's assassination, was asserting her kind of authority around the Turning Point USA infrastructure administratively, kind of setting up this hierarchy that she was going to be transitioning into this role. And I like the way that you pointed this out. They keep wanting to say trad wife, grieving widow, all this stuff. You cannot be a traditional wife and mother and leave your kids. Where are these kids? Who's taking care of these kids? She was on with Hannity, and she was thanking her TPUSA family. I think that's the first time that she said that, and everybody was like, what? And she's like, yeah, I have to just thank you and Ainsley. So are you telling me that Sean Hannity and Ainsley Earhart are taking care of the Kirk kids? Are they with Charlie's parents? People genuinely want to know. And so when people are saying, well, that's private information, nobody wants, it's for their safety. Okay, fine. I don't want to know their geographical location. But they made this public. You know, she didn't go and weep in a corner and stay behind closed doors and go and grieve. She didn't want privacy. She didn't want to stay private. She elected to, the day after Charlie was dead, his body probably wasn't even cold yet. It was still probably flying around with the Vice President of the United States on Air Force Two before an autopsy could be performed, by the way. And she inserted herself into the public. And so she made all this public. And then just by her fake alibi from the wrong day that she delivered to some random YouTuber rather than just giving it to Candace, and she has contact information with Candace. I don't know why she would do it that way, but it's like for the wrong date. And there's the kids with the, and so she's inserting the idea that she's constantly with these kids, and it's just a lie. She's not. And by the way, that kid wasn't Charlie's kid, because that kid looked like he's 4 or 5 years old, and his kid would be under 2 years old. So the whole thing is bizarre, but that video it's shocking. Again, it's shocking to see for a normal human being, especially if you are a Christian. Because TPUSA, and I think that that's really relevant here, Turning Point has always presented itself as a Christian organization. This is not Christian behavior. Lying is not Christian behavior. Being promiscuous is not Christian behavior. Wearing leather pants and groping the president and groping the vice president and rubbing their hair. This is not Christian behavior. None of this is Christian behavior. And so I just think that should punch every Christian in the face, and they should wake up to this. They should say, you know what? I'm going to take the blinders off. Something is amiss here. This isn't right.
Yeah. So let me play that video again.
Really led the staff meeting because Charlie had to fly back to Palm Beach with the president. And it's crazy to look back and you just kind of see the Lord kind of knitting his own beautiful image that sometimes we just don't always see. But we're blessed to be here for the second staff meeting at AmFest.
There it was. Okay, so
that is that backstage at AmFest? Is that what that is?
Yeah.
And they're all just like, this is the Lord. The Lord did this. Now she's the head of CEO of TPUSA. We can be openly Zionist again because Charlie Kirk was turning against Israel. He had turned. He had stated plainly after they tried to do the intervention in the Hamptons on him, where they had all the... By the way,
Mikey McCoy was there, and I think that that's something that we should always keep our foot on the gas with that is knowing that Mikey McCoy is the one who I believe took him there. Maybe Erica did. I don't know. I can't say that for sure, so I don't want to speculate. But he was there, and this is somebody that Charlie Kirk perceived as one of his best friends, if not his best friend.
Right.
And he was there at the Hamptons in this struggle session. It was a pressure campaign to the extent that it was confirmed by Candace Owens, who was in that 4.5-hour sit-down with Erica Kirk, that it was at that time that Benjamin Netanyahu, the sitting prime minister of Israel, called and offered over $100 million, 140, 150, whatever it was, over $100 million to a company that previous to that was operating on a $140 million annual budget. So, and Charlie Kirk said, no, that's not enough. No, I don't have a price tag. No, that's not enough. And when you look at the letter that Charlie Kirk wrote to Benjamin Netanyahu, a lot of people say, well, yeah, look at here. He's trying to tell Benjamin Netanyahu how to propagandize Americans further into, getting on the pro-Israel, pro-Zionist train. No. That's not what that was. Andrew Colvett lied about talking to a surgeon about Charlie Kirk's Superman-like neck bones of steel. I don't know about that, but he certainly had balls of steel. This guy wrote a letter to the prime minister who sat before Congress and lied about weapons of mass destruction and incubator babies that caused the deaths of thousands of Americans and spent billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and chasing down the Taliban and Al-Qaeda while we taught the importance of transgenderism to Pashtun tribesmen and looked the other way while warlords raped little boys. So for him to write that letter to that guy, the guy that's responsible for all of that death and for all of these wars, and for giving Americans and the American government, moreover, the pretext to hype up Americans to cheer this on. And that's what Turning Point was. It always was that machine. It was the machine that would shill for that fighting force to go into these wars that don't benefit America. They don't benefit our national security or certainly our economic interests. And I think Charlie realized, yeah, no, I don't want to do this. We have also, and I don't know if your audience is aware of this, we also have a source who's provided us with screenshots of text messages that were exchanged. They might be Signal, actually. I'm not going to, they're either text or Signal. Messages between Tyler Boyer and other like top-ranking TPUSA brass. And this was before Charlie was dead. And these messages were that they were showing tremendous concern. The word was concern, that Charlie Kirk was about to, quote, go ballistic on Trump over wars and over Epstein. Now, we know that Charlie Kirk was shouted down in one way or another by President Trump when he pushed back on Trump about that 12-day war with Iran, or that there was going to be some sort of a military strike with Iran. And then what happened immediately after Charlie was gone? Immediately, it went into hype up Americans on war. We're going into Venezuela. We want Mexico. We want Cuba. We want Colombia. We want Greenland. We just want to expand America to everywhere and turn into this like globalist, borderless society with a one world government. And of course, all the neocons love this. They love this. They love this agenda, this foreign policy agenda, this military agenda that Trump is exacting. And this was the very thing that Charlie Kirk was going to stand against. And when you consider the fact that Charlie Kirk was standing in front of millions of college-aged, military-aged young men who hanged on every word that he said, he had influence like nobody else. He probably would have been the president of this country someday, given a fair election. If people were to actually vote, I would say that he probably would have been the president someday. He had a ton of influence, but especially with a young group of American men that would mobilize, and they would go and they would enlist. And they would also follow him when he left the pro-Israel cause, as he said that he was going to be forced to do. And as he said that these people would kill him in the now infamous Harrison Smith tweet, where he said, I have it on good authority that Charlie thinks that Israel will kill him if he turns against them. And then we have rumors about the night before. We have, text messages that he was sending the night before. Well, now what do you have? You have Turning Point back in its original and really supercharged on steroids, I guess really its mission, its function, which is to act as the selling machine to get young American men excited about putting on a uniform and going and fighting in every corner of the world. They're going to need a lot of blood for all these wars. Where do you think they're going to get that from? These people don't go fight and die for themselves. They have basically conscripted us into their military for decades now. And so now that this is back on the table, TPUSA is putting chapters in high schools all over the country so they can leave their Turning Point event and go out into the lobby of their high school, right up to the Marine Corps or Army or Navy or Air Force or Space Force recruiting table, and get themselves signed up to go overseas and die for the very machine that Charlie was standing against. $150 million wouldn't do it for him. The pressure campaign, the threats, even knowing that he was going to die, was not enough to stop him from staring directly into the eyes of the beast and like a G fighting back. And that's why, look, I was one of Charlie Kirk's biggest detractors while he was alive. I will say that. And it was because of this, pro-Israel, pro-Zionist, like kind of, neocon, never-ending, unrelenting support for Donald Trump no matter what he did. But look, he said he was going to, quote, go ballistic. He was distancing himself from that. He had a up close and personal look. He was an insider. He hung out with the president all the time. He was best friends with Don Jr. When Don Jr. could select one person to go fishing in Iceland or whatever, he chose Charlie Kirk. And it was that long-lasting friendship, and obviously all of the donor class that goes along with Trump wherever he goes. That friendship was the conduit to all of that money. And then you have Tyler Boyer, who made that arrangement, that introduction of Erica Franzfey to Charlie, who would soon be Erica Kirk, the Romanian orphanages, the Ukrainian orphanages. It's just all so much. All of this was by design. The people that were around Charlie Kirk were very carefully selected and put around him. And when he looked around at the end, I got to believe that he realized, I'm in a den of vipers and there's no way out. That has to be one of the things that shakes me the most. And it's all of these people. I've said it a lot of times. He was betrayed by the people closest to him.
No doubt about it. And he's still being betrayed because they can't stop lying about his assassination and everything surrounding it. They even lie about his text messages or what was said at that Hamptons meeting. They lie about everything. They lie about having a secret conversation with the surgeon who took care of Charlie when he was assassinated. That didn't happen. They just make stuff up.
They're also lying about not being on Fort Huachuca, by the way.
That's right. Of course, they're lying about Fort Huachuca.
She was there. She was there. I know she was there. She was there on the 8th with Cabot Phillips. 2 days before Charlie died, she was there at the Candlewood Inn Suites. I know this. She was there. That's why we don't have an alibi. We have one for the 9th with fake kids or somebody else's kids entirely.
Right. We don't have.
She was there. And Brian Harpole was there the next day on the 9th, the day before he was assassinated.
Now, Cabot.
You know, that guy has a security company 11 minutes from the gates on Fort Huachuca.
Yeah. Yes. And the fact that anybody would ever hire Brian Harpole to do the security again when he can't manage to get somebody to look at the roofs. No one's watching the roof. A guy got up there. He was up there for at least a couple of minutes because he had to change his clothes. He had to take a gun out of his backpack or a long gun and put it together. He had to get a screwdriver out, had to put it together, had to put the scope on, had to line up the shot. He had to take the shot. Then he had to take the rifle apart again, then have to stuff it in his backpack or wherever he puts it.
Oh, all right. Well, case closed. I believe all that.
And nobody saw him?
That's totally possible. I just can't believe that there are people with big platforms on the internet, that this was the most prolific assassination of my lifetime. I mean, I wasn't alive when JFK was took, but of my lifetime and of these people as well, it's the biggest assassination of our lifetime. And they are just accepting this? Like, are we surrounded by people with sub 50 IQs?
No, you're surrounded by...
Who could look at that fairy tale and say, yep, I believe that Fed slop?
No, we're surrounded by people who are being paid off because we know that the money train is all around this right now. And so when you see people flipping 180 degrees, you know that there's some chicanery going on there. It's not an honest opinion. And so I've seen that in many social influencers, big time, and they're flipping. So they're compromised with either just the way Mossad compromises people with blackmail, or they're compromised with money, the way Benjamin Netanyahu tried to compromise Charlie, or both, or money and blackmail, but they're compromised. And so it's obvious to me. But I wanted to ask you one thing before we move on to the next segment. When you say that the people who are working at TPUSA are closeted homosexuals, what is the significance of that? Because I know Candace Owens, when she's doing her deep dive into the military connections to Charlie Kirk's assassination, she keeps bumping up to these people who are high up in the military who are either PDF files or gay, and she says her assertion is that these people rise to the top and they're the ones who are easily controlled because they're easily blackmailed. And is that what you're saying when you point out that there's a lot of people at TPUSA are closeted homosexuals? Are you saying that because that makes them easily blackmailed?
100%.
Okay.
It makes them 100% controllable. They work as the front-facing people or administrative people or high-ranking people at a Christian organization. And if you ask real Christians about homosexuality, they will tell you, well, God blew up 2 whole cities over that, Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, it's frowned upon. So first of all, there's that. Second of all, a lot of these people have beards. They have fake wives, or they have wives, they have children. They're living this like kind of heterosexual presented lifestyle. And in fact, they're not. So yeah, they're easily controllable. They're easily manipulated and blackmailed. And then also, I find it concerning and I find it relevant that you have these kind of closeted homosexuals who, by the way, I don't know if Matthew Tucciaroni said this on the air or not, but he definitely told me this privately. And because I'm not gay, I wouldn't know this. But what he said was, it's the closeted homosexuals that you have to worry about around younger people. And with that being said, I find it very concerning that these people, especially with the allegations that have been made about Tyler Boyer and others that have positions of authority, that they use that position of authority to dominate younger, more naive boys. And I find it a little bit alarming that this organization, with all of this going on at the top, is going into these high schools and having all of this contact with young boys, especially after knowing that Erica Kirk was like texting directly with somebody who was a minor. And I believe that this person's parent got a hold of that message. There was something recently about that. And so these people are having direct contact, with these people. And, I've seen this too many times. I've covered these stories now for 5 years, Jimmy. I know how these people work. And I know the previous associations. I know about Erica Kirk's nonprofit in Romania. She was 17 years old. 17 years old, and she's running a nonprofit that deals with orphans in one of the biggest hotbeds on traffic earth for all of these PDF files to operate.
It was like ground zero for trafficking.
Yeah. And the same with Ukraine, where Tyler Boyer brings his own Eastern European orphanage connections. All of this stuff is just insane. But yeah, I mean, as far as like the closeted homosexuality is concerned, and I think that's why they got rid of Tucciaroni, because he was out. He's not closeted. He's just an openly gay guy. They don't have anything on him. And also, it wasn't just him, but he confirmed this. There were several insiders that have told me that these people, when they get hired into these low-paying or oftentimes not paying, no-pay jobs, and they're given 1-year contracts, and they all have to sign 10-year NDAs. Have you ever heard of that before? I got a 1-year contract, but a 10-year NDA. I've heard this now from 6 different sources inside of Turning Point. I'm trying to get my hands on one of these NDAs. Nobody wants to give me one because these people are very litigious, it would seem. They're going to go after Candace. They're going after Wolves in Finance. I don't check my mail, though. Okay. So maybe that's why I haven't got my letter yet. But
of course, we're not doing the old smear that if you're gay, you're a pedophile. That's not what we're doing. We're saying...
No, I'm not saying that at all.
No.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that Matthew Tucciaroni, I'm going off what I've been told by a gay guy. And what he's saying is that closeted homosexuals have a higher likelihood to be a predator in that way.
Okay.
And so it's concerning. But I think, moreover, even if none of that is going on, let's just say, yeah, no, they're not doing that with kids. Okay. It's a Christian organization. They're in the closet. They're lying. They're living a fake lifestyle. If they're outed, they lose everything. They lose their position at Turning Point because they're no longer useful to Erica Kirk, who's proven to everybody that she'll either fire you or kill you if you're no longer useful to her. They'll lose their family. They'll lose their marriage because that was fake. Because I don't know a whole lot of wives that are sticking around with a guy when she knows that he's been sticking himself elsewhere. And the kids and the custody battles and the houses and the refinances, or the repossessions and the foreclosures. I can just see all of that happening to these people. And then also, too, they're being told that. And they're being reminded of that over and over again. We have this on you. We have this on you. And so, yeah, I mean, that's really concerning, especially for people that are dealing with an organization that I would estimate is probably valued at about $1 billion now, if not more.
So now